Hey everyone, welcome to the Creative Handles Workshop online version. This one is for all my Patreons out there. This is the companion that goes along with the live version that you would get from me at Cream City Clay in West Allis, Wisconsin. So let's go ahead and get started. So here's what's cool. Handles are the most intimate part of all of pottery or ceramics or whatever you want to say. The reason why is because it alone is the actual, I would say, the physical connection and the aesthetic connection between the artist and the owner of an object. So if I go to purchase something at a craft show or a seminar or a gallery, and I want it to be functional, okay, and it has a handle on it, I immediately want to touch it. I immediately want to come in contact with that. And think about this. The handle is that, at that point, is the connection between the artist and the person who's going to purchase your work. So how important is that handle, right? It is the most important, I would say the most important single technique that you can do in pottery if you do things that are functional. We're here today because this is a companion with our Creative Handles seminar that I do with groups at Cream City Clay in West Allis, Wisconsin. If you're watching this without that incorporation, or you haven't seen me live in a seminar format, then welcome, and we'll go through basically the same stuff. While you can see more details perhaps being live, I think watching it in a video allows you to stop, rewind, go back, look at things more than once. Of course, this is all based on practice, so you can have this on while you're practicing perhaps and things like that. So it's pretty cool that way. So let's take a minute. We'll do some inspiration. We'll go over some of my journey and some of the things over here that you can make connections with the things we do today. Now, I mentioned, first of all, there's some things that I do that have a handle, but don't have a handle. These are my creamers. I love them. They're just to me, it's just an elegant shape. I love the size of it. But what I love the most out of these is just this little notch that I put in there. See that? That little notch. And sometime I'll do a little demonstration how I do that notch. And then if you go on the other side, it's the opposite direction. You see that? I'll get it in the light just right. There you go. Where that notch is right there. Now, if I put my thumb or my fingers in that notch, and then I come on this side and I put my thumb in that notch, guess what? I have a handle. The other part of it is this little fin on the back here. You see that? That fin on the back that comes out. That, look at that. That fits my hand just like that. So when I grab this thing from the top, and I have my thumb here and I have my fingers here, and then that fin on the top here like that, it's ready to pour my creamer into my coffee. A handle without having a handle. Great place to start, right? This is an example of an extruded one. Okay, so this is an extruded handle that would be the top of small casserole. And you'll notice that that has a foot on this side and a foot on this side that was pre-made from the extrusion. So this is from the extruder. And you pre-make those, and I'll show you that process when we get to extrusion today. and then the top is decorated in a sense that it comes around, and then I just pull that up in order to put that peak on the top there. So that's the extrusion that goes on the top of what would be my casseroles. Right. Here we have our sugar jar, and on the top here, I don't know, I'm going to lift this up. I'm not going to lift that up. Why would I lift that up in front of the camera, right? But here, so here's my handle. You see the feet in the front here. You see the foot in the front here. And then I push on that inside and the inside here in order to create that little push to the outside that complements some of the roundness and curves that you see in the piece. Sugar back here has a different handle on the top, also extruded. Okay, also an extruded, get close on that one. Also an extruded handle on the top there. And it looks like a hanger, right? So I love these things where you make kind of a connection with, hey, that looks like, something from life, It looks like the top of a hanger or something like that, right? So those are extruded ones, okay? So we're going to get to the extruded ones coming up a little bit later. Then we have the ones that I talked about before, which were the table blanks. Now, table blanks are ones that we can have an exact width of each of them so that we can duplicate them, okay? And here's an example of duplication on these, okay? So these were duplicated, so they are the same size. So when you pick them up, you have one finger that goes in here, you have one finger that goes in here, and that picks up the top for your lidded piece, okay? So these are an example of what we're going to do today on our table blanks. So then we have handles that come off of mugs. So many different kinds. And so what we're going to do today is we're going to do a loop, all right, what I call a loop blank, and then we're also going to do table blanks that are going to go on the mug as well. But the loop blank is one. This is an example of a loop blank like that. So the loop blank was made by taking a solid piece, pulling the handle in the air, and then looping that around onto itself, letting it dry, and then cutting off that amount of loop right there that you want to apply, okay? Now with the loop blank, what I always do is I always connect them here with a coil. So you see that extra thickness at the top and this extra thickness at the bottom. And it just makes it look a bit more organic, like it's coming from the pot. It also gives it a lot of extra strength. And it also helps with cracking a little bit. Okay, and we'll talk about cracking obviously being a big part of making handles as well. Now, these are some of the current pots that I'm making, and you see some of the differences in the handle now with style. And so now you have where the connection is here, and you have this lift right there. So that was what I would consider to be part of my style. You have that lift, and then you have that heart, that half heart shape that happens right there. That comes down, and then your eye has to come down and back up into the pot right there. And so we're going to go over how that happens today. We're also going to talk about whether a handle is straight like that, or whether, is that straight? Yeah, it's pretty straight. Straight like that, or it has a taper. I believe this other one might have a bit more taper to it. Yep. So this one would have, if you take a look at that side, has more taper where it's wider on the top and it comes narrow to the bottom of that particular one. Okay? So that type of handle then it is great because you can see how it works with some of the glazes that are in there. You see the glaze sits there. It doesn't have a stop point. It organically goes right back into the piece. And that to me really shows a lot of the artist taking the time to do that. This is not a very fast handle to do, and it doesn't look like a fast handle to do. It looks like, the artist went in and really smoothed and really took their time to make sure it's the perfect shape and that it looks just right and everything. So it's not haphazardly done. and it comes across as that. This is a handle of one of the teapots. I just happen to have this sitting here, so I might as well talk about it. The difference in this one is that it is not brought, this is a coil that went around the handle. This again is one of the loop handles that I talked about. And you see that connection is a little different in that I left the connection to the pot rounded. So this part of the coil on this side, I smoothed it in here, but I did not smooth it into the pot afterwards. And it's a completely different look. But what's nice about that particular one is that you get a lot of fancy glaze stuff happening off this edge where it starts to run down the side. It collects inside of there and runs down the side. And so you have different things that are happening with that particular handle for that teapot right there. And then we're going to talk about today, another thing we'll talk about is embellishments. And you see that this one has the same type of handle. It's a little bit, comes down a little bit further outside of here, but you see an embellishment on the bottom. And this is what I call a teardrop, or what I call a pinky teardrop. There's also a teardrop that you could do, a thumb teardrop on the top, but this is what I would consider to be a pinky teardrop on the bottom. So as you come to hang on to it here, this is a 3-handle mug. That pinky teardrop is where your pinky sits. See that? So your pinky sits and rests comfortably on the bottom there, and it's able to hold up some of the weight of the liquid or whatever you may have, okay? Teardrop, this one also has a pinky teardrop, a little bit different, a little bit higher up, okay? That one is designed for you to 3-finger again, but you'll notice what happens with my pinky on that one is it goes underneath. See that? My pinky will hook underneath that one, and now I have a handle where my pinky feels like it's comfortably gripping the pot actually underneath that one on the side. So pinky sits underneath that one, okay? And that's a pinky teardrop from the top. All right, so the first thing we're going to start out with, I have about a pound of clay, and I'm just going to make some table planks. And so I start with a round piece, and I'm going to make this into a spike, okay? Now when I make it in a spike, I have it at a slight angle, and I'm going to just roll back and forth, kind of like a boat, okay? Now if it gets flat, it's no problem, doesn't really matter, but I'm going to just get that spike started, and then it's going to look like this, okay? So that's the start of my spike, and I'm going to give it a little bit of a gripper on the top. So just get my fingers underneath and kind of pull it up. And it gives me a little bit of a handle there to hang on to. So that's kind of how I do it. Just kind of hang on to it a little bit like that. And then I'm going to get started in the water. Now I'm going to talk about kind of what I'm doing and what I'm thinking about with my hands as I go ahead and do it. My first one that I'm going to do as I get started is just go around. I'm not really thinking about a shape right now. I'm just using my whole hand to bring it down, okay? So I'm starting at the top, and I'm bringing the whole thing down, okay? Now I'm trying to keep it even so that my thought is so that the top part that's coming down here, I'm starting at the very top and I'm going all the way down to the bottom. And you'll notice that it's coming across fairly even coming down. So it doesn't have a sharp stop point. It just tapers very gradually to the bottom. I'm kind of looking for that. And the reason why is because I want this to all be, as I go here, I want it to all be pretty much the same thickness for as long as possible. Okay? So I am pulling and putting more effort in the top, and then just allowing it to just relax at the bottom, okay? But I'm doing more pulling on the very top of it. Now, I'm not doing anything but using my whole hand right now because I think a little bit more, I could get a little bit more before I start determining what side is going to be which. Okay. Now, one thing you'll notice as you look at it from this front here is that from about here on down, I have the same thickness. It's similar to making a coil, okay? Similar to rolling out a coil. If you want the coil to be an equal thickness all the way through, you got to move your hands in a certain way to keep that thickness even. It's kind of the same way in doing this. I'm just wetting my hand, bringing that weight from the top, okay? Pull that down until it becomes even, and right there at that point right there is kind of where I'm working things to. You see that? I'm bringing that weight down. It's getting longer at the bottom, but the top I'm bringing that down to there. When it comes to the bottom part here, I'm just sort of relaxing with it a bit. Okay? Now, as I'm doing that, I'm not putting too much pressure on it, and I'm not doing anything other than the full hand movement. So I'm not doing any of this. I'm not doing any of this yet. None of that. I'm just doing the full hand on it right now to be able to get that length and to be able to get the equalness of it. And the reason why is because we're doing table blanks. Okay, we're not making a handle right now. Okay, so now that it's even on the bottom, now I can start to designate a side. And by designating a side, I'm going to use this part of my hand, and I'm going to go here, and I'm going to go here. Okay, now I'm doing that just so that I can designate a front and a back. Okay, then I'm going to take my scissor fingers and I'm going to also go front to back. And now is when I'm start to determine that overall thickness and the overall shape. So I have that much, I'm going to hold it up at the top right there, that much of usable clay now that I have for my table blanks. So the thickness that I have, I'm going to get pretty close to what I want for the width of my piece. But all of that aesthetic is going to be determined later. So I have 1, 2, 3 table blanks. Okay? So I just take them at the edge of the table and pull them off. So I'll move you in a little bit closer so you can see that a little bit closer on those table blanks. Okay? So there are my 3 table blanks. So they're all about the same thickness. Now I wanted 4 table blanks. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just go back to my water. And from my starting point that I have right here, I'm going to pull down 1 more. Again, full hand. And I'm going to pull down 1 more in order to get 1 more table blank. Okay? So again, my thinking, one more time, is that I'm coming from the top and I'm bringing that down. Again, the idea being this is like rolling a coil. Okay? So there is my last blank that I want right there, that amount. Okay? So now I go in, front, back, just so I give it some sides. Okay? There we go, front and back. And that's my table blank. So go back down, get the width that I want, or the length that I want, and that is my last table blank. A table blank would be used if you have 100 mugs and you want to quickly be able to have something to grab onto, attach to the mug, shape it, attach it onto the next one. Table blanks are the production way of doing a handle, as close as possible. The idea being that these table blanks, you've got to make sure that they're the right size and length and width, so you don't have to do a lot with them when you attach them to your mug. Okay, but we'll do that in a little bit later, but that's your table blanks. All right, so while my table blanks are drying, we're going to make 1 loop handle. This is going to be a little bit different because this one is going to be an actual handle that I'm going to make out of this and attach to it for the very last one. So my main concern and my main thinking with making a loop handle is that very top right there. I want that to be the right size. I don't want that to be too thick at the top. And the tendency always is to leave that big, thick top like that. Okay? So we'll talk about that when I get done. I'm creating not a blank, but I'm making a handle now. So the difference is that I'm concerned with and thinking about the overall shape of the finished product. When I made my blanks down here, they were mostly just a blank, like mostly just round. All I did was designate a front and a back, right? And it makes it easier then to apply to the cup because I can actually see the front and back of it. You know what I'm saying? But this one has to be completely finished, okay? So there's a few things that I'm going to do. I'm going to take this and I'm going to use my scissor fingers on this in order to draw the outside down. Now, when I come in with my scissor fingers, I'm going to grip. You see this little finger, this finger right here, my middle finger, grips around it slightly. And then my other one comes over the top and I come down. That gives me a little bit more leverage in order to taper this side. So you see that side, how that got tapered on the side. I'm going to do the same thing on this side now. All right. Now, another thing that's happening, if that top is getting wider, I want to ensure that that taper is happening to the bottom. So if that's not happening, then what I need to do is I need to come with my fingers here and gently pinch a bit more at the bottom. See that? I start out there and I pinch as I get to the bottom. Okay, and that's the width of it so that that is more narrow at the bottom. See that little pinch at the bottom? Now see how narrow that is? I want to keep that narrowness with that portion of the technique. I don't want this to seem really complicated. It's going to be a fluid thing the more you practice with it, but this is our starting point. So now I'm going to hang on to this like this. I'm going to press that pop down because I have a little extra right there. And now I have that top. And now I'm going to take this bottom portion here. I'm not going to use all of this at the end. Some of this is going to be sacrificed a bit. And I'm going to bring that around. And I'm going to connect it. I'm going to bring it up so I have enough. Okay? I have enough. Don't cut yourself short on the bottom. And then all that on the bottom, see that there is just going to be sacrificed. So this is going to be my usable stuff. Now, the only thing that's important, this shape is not important. That shape is going to change as you apply it to the pot. You're going to tweak that and all that stuff. So don't worry about that. But the volume of that amount has to be appropriate for what you need to use. Don't cut yourself short in order to apply it to the pot later. All right? So that is not as fast as doing the blanks, but still pretty quick. Like if I had maybe 10 mugs to do and I had to make handles for them, this might be appropriate to do for 10 of them. And this clay that you don't use at the bottom is, when you get done, is immediately recyclable. Because by the time this is leather hard to take off, this clay will still be fairly workable at the bottom and can be re-wedged and reused again. All right, so here is our table blanks. Now our table blanks are going to work really well. Let's just say if you had a commission and there was a coffee shop in town and they wanted you to make 50 mugs and you wanted those mug handles to all look as much the same as possible. These blanks, being the same length and approximately the same width, would allow you to have a starting point for that to happen, right? So if you start off with the blanks being all the same, the chances of you working those blanks where they all will look the same and through the process is starting off right, okay? Not to say that making these blanks are going to be the end all and they're going to guarantee success, but at least it's a consistent starting point. The other thing is the loop handle. The benefit of the loop handle that we did here as a starting point is that it's almost a completed handle already. And that means that you don't disturb the mug too much when you apply it. And we'll take this guy off once it's ready to go. We'll put that on the mug. And you'll see that I don't really stress the mug too much at all. I just simply apply it to the outside. When you pull a handle, and you'll see that later, while actually taking and attach a lug and pull the handle off of the pot, you're handling it quite a bit. And it causes the mug to get somewhat deformed because you are hanging onto it a lot. And you kind of can't let it dry too much to where it's not going to get deformed, because then your difference in drying time is a little bit too much. So this handle is a good solution where it's not so slow that you can't do a lot of them, but at the same time, it's not so fast that you are working right off the pot and disrupting it too much. So now we'll talk tools for just a second. I went to Harbor Freight and got this. This is a heat gun. It has two different settings here, kind of a not so hot and then a real hot. They work really, really good. It's relatively quiet, almost like a blow dryer. And so it works really, really well. And so as I work my piece here, and just go up and down a little bit, all I'm looking to do is I'm looking to take some of the tackiness out of it. Two things are happening here with this. I'm actually causing the handle to have a memory of that shape. Okay, so it has a starting point, right, for the shape, particularly on the top here. I want that to be somewhat rounded like that. The other thing that's happening here is the dryness of the clay that's being attached to the pot is becoming equal to the pot. So my cracks would be much less. Sometimes if you add clay to the pot and pull it off the pot and make it really wet and everything, like pulling a handle, you might get some cracks that way. So I have a pot now that's already been fired, but it doesn't have a handle on it. This is one of my handleless pouring vessels. But we'll go ahead and put a handle on this side. And we'll put the handle on that is the looped handle. So this has been dried to the point that it's not tacky anymore. It's still flexible, as you can see, but it's not tacky on the surface. The surface is dry. And I want to stop right there once the surface gets dry. I don't want to get in a position where it's so dry that I can't reshape this without cracks happening in the piece. I showed you before in some of the pieces that I have that initial loop that comes up and then comes back down, but it has to kind of raise up a little bit. There's a few ways of doing that. One of the ways of doing that is just to make sure that when I cut this off, I found if I leave that loop there that I like, okay, and cut it off behind it, that has a memory of kind of staying like that a little bit. Even if it becomes kind of, through the process, it becomes disturbed a little bit, it'll want to go back to that because it's been dried just a little bit. So I'm going to take that, okay, take a look from there, put my finger underneath, and I'm going to just clip that off right there. And on the bottom here, from the bottom up, I'm just going to cut that off on the bottom as well. So even though it's quite wet yet, you see that it still has a memory of staying in that position yet on the bottom, and it has a memory on the top here of staying in that rounded position. Okay, so I can hang on to it because it's not tacky right now, and I'm going to go ahead and put some slip, score and slip on the side. So I put some score lines on that open part right there. So right there is my connection between the two. Put a little slip on there. I like to have my slip pre-mixed. I don't like to get it out of my slop or anything like that. So I like to have this pre-mixed stuff, and I will bring that to the seminar, make sure that's part of that. Now the nice part of this process too, when I put it on, is that it sits right on my hand like that, if I have that loop at the top. So I kind of like that. So all I got to do is put my thumb on the top of it like this, find my spot where I'm going to have it, and I press with my index finger. See that? my index finger will press against it. And the most important part of this entire process is to wiggle it. Wiggling is the absolute key, all right, to getting a good attachment. Not anything else. You can't say anything else is the key. Wiggling is the most important part. So right there you have a pretty nasty looking handle. All right. So now as I bring this bottom up, see that? Oh, it's starting to get better, starting to get better, starting to get better. I'm going to leave some extra on the top there to bring up later. All right. So I want to have a little extra right there, a little extra width. And remember, it's going to shrink too. Don't ever forget that. And on the bottom. Now on the bottom here, typically that's going to get connected with a coil and slip. But I can lift that up. So what I do is I push that up a little bit further, put a little slip underneath that, take it, put it right on the top like that. And again, the most important part of handle making, wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. When I wiggle, I feel it bite just a little bit at some point when it's connected into the piece. All right. This is really odd putting it on top of a finished piece. Okay. So there's my starting point. Not a bad handle onto itself, right? So now I'm going to tweak it. So what I do is I'm going to try to do this so everybody can see. So let's bring you down here with me. All right, and right in here. There we go. So what I want to do is I want to take my thumb on the top, my finger underneath like this, and I hold with my thumb from the bottom here and pull up, and my finger lifts as I'm pulling it up. See that? My finger lifts as I'm pulling it up. So my thumb is pulling up, my finger is lifting. See that? So my finger lifts, my thumb pulls up. And that puts that in a good position. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop this down like this, and I'm going to pull this side down. So now that I have my lift, I'm going to pull this side out until I have that, I don't know, elegance, I guess, coming down. Okay, so let's take a look. So there is what I would consider to be my style. All right. The reason I like that is because when you put your finger underneath there, see that? The first finger underneath there, it naturally accepts the weight, right? Because it has a home. So your eye takes it up. Nice curve, the smooth curve. I would probably smooth that out a little bit here on the bottom. Now I'm getting picky, right? But isn't that what it's all about? There we go. And a nice up to a noticeable peak, and then that smooth curve coming down. Now down here where my finger is, probably going to get filled with a coil. Okay? Now remember this guy. I can take that, take a little bit off of there, roll that in my hand, roll that out between my hands like that until you have that coil piece. I'm going to have to wet that inside there. Sometimes I use a little bit of slip with a brush, with my finger, whatever. So what I did was I just added some right there with my finger. Then I'm going to take this, smooth it right down, just like that. Push that down, push that down. And that is going to get smoothed out, pushed down. Half goes this way, half goes that way, until that creates that bottom. And that's where that bottom then is going to mimic this top. And that's what's going to give me my style. All right, so the last thing that we have to do with these table blanks is to put them over a form like this. Okay, so this is just kind of like a rolling pin, just a blank piece of wood. And in order to get these evened out and all the same shape, I'm just going to put these over the piece of the wood Just make sure that both the top and the bottom, just kind of bring them in like that. Just balance them on there so the top and bottom are equal. And this will give a starting point for these. And again, further ensure that these are going to be as equal as possible and as uniform as possible when they get done. So now let's get back to these table blanks. I've taken the heat gun or the blow dryer and I've dried off those blanks just a little bit because I'm going to attach them for lugs on the side of this piece. If you make them large enough, you can put them on your piece, attach them to the end of your piece by just taking one of the sides and mushrooming it like that. Now how I did that was just take my thumb, my forefinger, and tap the top and create that side right where your crook of your thumb is. And then flip it over to the other side and start at the center and tap out on that side over top of your thumb. And you get done, you'll have both of those sides come out and you'll be able to have that to attach into your piece for a lug. Now some people will do that for the very top and some people will do the same thing for the bottom. A little water on here to create a slurry, water on this side to create a slurry, and that can get attached to the pot. Wiggle on the top and wiggle on the bottom. Clip a little bit off the top, same amount off the bottom. Score both sides. Apply water. Create a slurry. Create a slurry. Attach to the top, wiggle, attach to the bottom, and you have your lug handles. And last but not least, before we talk about the extruded one, we have to pull one off of the pot itself. Now, the pot that I'm going to be using is, again, our pouring vessel that we had before, just cleaned up the side a little bit, and what I'll be doing is pulling one off of the pot itself. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to roll it in my hands, make a nice round ball. That's a good start point. And then go ahead and make our spike shape on the table. Now I hold the top part a little while so that the bottom part pulls down and starts to taper for me. About there. Now I'm going to take and I'm going to shape this just a little bit before I apply it. I want this to be as close to the final shape as I can get. So all I have to do is just tweak the thickness just a little bit by pulling it off the pot in order to just shape it and just make the surface nice, right? So the first thing I have to do is make sure that this top is flat, okay? So I have to tap that in order to make that top flat, and then I have to make that a football shape, okay? So that's the first thing in making that the right starting point. The other thing is, I want that top to be not thick. I think one of the things that you work through when making handles is you start off, if you're pulling handles off the pot, you have a tendency of starting off with that top being too thick, and it really is hard to get that amount of thickness that's close to the pot down into your piece. And so now is the time to make that the appropriate thickness. Then what I'm going to do is just take this side here that's fat, and I'm going to pinch it in my fingers just like this. So I use my straight part of my finger, and I'm going to pinch it with my thumb like that. So I'll put it in there just like that. You can see that that just creates that tapered, thinner side. Okay, and that should end up right at the top of that football shape right there. It should, that pinched part should start there and come all the way down on both sides. Now you'll notice something. When I do that, it changes and makes this thinner naturally on the bottom. Okay, but I still want to take that on the sides And I want to pinch that down, just like that. Makes it just a little longer. And make that the proper shape. And just take a moment of time in order to make that the best shape that I can get it. Okay? So here is my beginning shape. Okay? Just like some sort of ancient artifact from the ground. Some sort of bone from another time. All right? Now you can taper that at the bottom as much as you like, and I will tell you that the more that this is tapered now, the more it's going to end up tapered at the end. So starting off at a good spot right now, making sure the outsides are right, making sure this top is, by the way, I should probably take this top, pinch it just a little bit with your fingers, and bring it back over top of your thumb. Bring it back over top of your thumb like that. And see, that gives it a little bit of lift, just enough to attach that to the pot later. Just store a little bit of clay, just like that. See that? Just a little lip of clay on the top, so that when I attach it, that little bit of clay right there, I can grab that with a tool and just smooth that in. Okay? Non-painful. So I'm going to score that with my scoring tool, whatever I can find around. Now, this is wet clay. I should not be scoring this clay. I should be scoring this pot. But because it's not scoreable, I'll score this instead. But as a general rule, I always want to score the drier of the two. Okay? And then put my slip on this one. Okay? Because it will help to actually push that slip then into the lines. I don't want to put slip onto my lines because I'll lose my lines. Right? I'm going to make my nice lines in there. I don't want those lines to be lost until it touches this slip. Okay? So, make score lines there, slip on here. Outside, push, push. And you'll see that little bit of clay? That now comes off here and off here. That was that little bit that I pushed over my thumb like that I can now go in and smooth out on the top and the bottom in order to enhance that connection. Okay? Pardon me. Okay, so I go like this with my fingers. I'll go a little closer like this, and I'll just smooth that down. Smooth that down in both directions. So that got wide. Don't worry about it. Because when you pull that, you're going to draw that back in again. But now it's getting wide as I smooth that down. That's okay. It increases the surface of connection. There you go. See that? Now I can take this little bit on the end. Smooth that right down. Take this little bit. Smooth that right down. And now you see that connection between the two. Okay? Still have the bulk of clay in the middle here. I just had just that little overhang that became that right there. And now I have a real stable feel to it. Okay? Now, first thing, take on the side and pinch and push. See that? Pinch and push. And take it on this side. Watch. Pinch and push. And there's my little starting point there. So that's going to be a decorative thing that goes all the way through. And here we go. All right. How am I going to do this so you can see? Let's put you guys over here. There we go. This here. That works. Okay. So first, of course, understand that this is not as complicated as I might make this sound. First of all, I'm just making sure the surface right now is wet to move. And I'm going to start to pull this down. Now, this part, going like this, is going to help my taper. Going like this is going to help my taper on the sides. Okay, so you have two tapers going. This one that's getting more narrow as it goes down, and this taper where it's getting narrow on the outsides. Okay, so this one helps with that way, then on this side, and then this one, see that? That helps with that taper coming down to keep that bottom thin. Okay, it's all very gentle. There's no like one stroke that I'm doing with this that's going to be substantial. Now, as I'm doing that, this part of my thumb right here has a bone on the side of it, and that part is what I'm putting in there like that. Putting that in there, and I press that against it and bring it down. That's what sort of, I guess, grips it a little bit in order to bring that down. Okay. Now I haven't done any scissor stuff yet, basically because it's already wide enough. If it wasn't wide enough right now, I would do this scissor fella. This one, scissor fella like that. But that one has a tendency of getting it a bit wider. The scissor one is good, what I'm doing right now, to just do a little bit of finish to it. Okay? Just like that. You see that gives it a really nice clean finish on it. That's sort of a finishing move. All right, now I'm spending more time on the top because the top, of course, is where it is thicker. All right. There we go. Thin enough. Okay. Take it on the bottom here. Push that to the side. Push that to the side. I want that to start coming down just a bit. Okay. So see that part coming down? I'm just pushing here and pushing here. Get that coming up. Get that coming up. There we go. Take this. Down. Make sure it's straight. And attach at the bottom. Now the good thing at the bottom is that it's really wet already, right? And so we don't need to worry too much about scoring or putting slip on it on the bottom. It's really wet, so it connects really well on the bottom. Okay, so that's my starting point. Two things to remember. It's going to shrink, so it's going to be smaller than that. So it's got to right now be just a hair bigger than what you would consider to be finished. Okay, if it's not, move it up just a little bit on the bottom here, just like that, and give yourself some extra material. Okay, now what I want to do is I want to start off at the top here. I want to start here, lift up, push in. Okay, we'll see if I can do it one-handed. Lift up and push in. Okay, I'm going to do it down here. And now I did it two-handed before. Lift up with my thumb and my finger. So my thumb starts at the bottom, lifts up to my finger, and my finger lifts it the rest of the way. Then turn it sideways once I have that lift on the top that I like. And I make sure that this is a very, very slight curve right there. So now, by drawing it a little bit, I can really sort of be finicky about the position that I really wanted to dry in. And also, my piece that I was working from, because I was pulling, had to be pretty dry, right? And so now, by getting the shape that I want and drying it a little bit, I help the handle to catch up a bit in the drying stage to what the piece is, so that I get minimal cracking in the end if I don't want to put any embellishments on from here. And last but not least, we have our extruder. The extruder work is for very small handles that you might have, as I showed you in the beginning, that might be on the top of a piece. They also can be used for handles on the side for a smaller piece, or if you want to do a single finger handle. So extruders work great. This is our extruder that we have in the shop. And this one is just one I got from the ceramic shop. They have lots of different styles. Shimpo has one as well. But if you open up this side's going to take a die that is on top of the clay. So I have a little bit of clay here. Go ahead and drop that in. And I have a die that I can use. We'll just use this one. Put that in the top. And then just close it up. So this is just a shop-made little holder here. I could hang on to this just as easily and just use it like a caulk gun, and it comes out the end. But I like using this, and this just hooks onto the side, just like that. And then I can bring the plunger down, and then start to bring it out the bottom. That'll be good. So here's my extruded piece, and I'll show you how to make a handle out of that. So what I'm going to do is I put it on my board. I'm going to first cut off the portion that I'm not going to use. So again, pardon me while I get my knife. So I'll cut off this portion in the beginning, and I'll cut off that portion at the end. Now, these can be shaped any way you want to. Sometimes in the beginning here, maybe you would roll that out, and maybe roll this part out on this side, and leave that hexagonal shape in the middle. But at this time, we'll just leave it there. So what I'm going to do is I have this foam piece, and I learned this at one of the workshops I was at. Somebody at the workshop was doing it, and I really liked the idea of it. Creating little feet on both sides by using this piece of foam that's found in when you buy cones for your for firing. This is inside with the cones, so it's great to reuse it. I'm going to put that down so I have just a little bit hanging off of the edge, and you'll notice that I just have this on the bottom so I can lift it up and show you. Okay, I have a little piece of wood, and what I'm going to do is just take this front part with the piece of wood, and I'm going to squish it back to where the foam is. Now I'm hanging onto it with the foam so that I damage it as little as possible while I do this. And by pushing that back, you see what I have now is I have a little bit of a foot on the bottom there like that. That's created where it just sort of crushes onto itself. I'm going to flip it over to the other side. Just a little bit left like that where it's just hanging out the end. I kind of get underneath it just a little bit, and I draw it back with my thumb and my finger that's hanging onto it on this end. And there you see the result where it's attached. Okay, so now I have the dog bone sort of look, and then in the middle here I'm just going to flex this. If your clay is flexible enough and you don't have it too dry, you're able to flex that around enough to be able to make that handle. Now, if it doesn't go around nicely enough for you, you can coax it. I have Dolan tool handles. Okay, what I'm going to do is put that right on the top, just like that, balance that on the top. I'm going to put my finger on the top of it like that. You see how it's sitting there like that. I'm just going to take this and tap it. I'm pushing down with my finger on the top just sort of balances it. And that gets it moving. It to that shape. Good little trick. So you can take that and you could use it, instead of using it for a top like this, for a lid, I would be able to use it for a